So in this video, I just want to talk about, I'll post this slideshow, and this might not be as exciting coming through a video. And I apologize. I'm also going to kind of read some of this, but this I think opens up how cool, bizarre, kind of the stories and the facets of Pythagorean theorem are. We'll start with maybe a few boring things, and maybe if you can bear with that, we'll get to some exciting stuff, which is first off, a theorem to really think about it is something that needs to be proven for all cases in math using variables so that it holds up. So we can't just pick numbers for a right triangle and show that it works for 100 different triangles or even a billion. We have to use variables to show that it works in all cases. Um, and I'm just going to go to the next one and kind of just highlight some important things here. Um, the theorem was named after Pythagoras, obviously, was a Greek mathematician, but it was proved elsewhere in other countries, and even before Pythagoras, it had been proven. There's about 400 proofs, and some were made or completed by famous people like Leonardo da Vinci and Albert Einstein and President Garfield. And each one is a unique version of proving that a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So that's kind of cool. And then a connection to this that we've kind of talked about in class was that Fermat's last theorem, which was proven in 1994, which is pretty recent in the realm of when some of these other things happened. And I'll get back to Fermat's last theorem. This is just a cool painting that has, I think this is Euclid and this is Pythagoras. And this is called the School of Athens. It was painted by Raphael. So it has some famous mathematicians in it. This is a cool, I'm not sure if it will show up. It says, Behold. And this is a proof of Pythagorean theorem that had no math work. It was done by a famous Indian mathematician. And it just said, Behold, probably not written in English. But it was kind of funny because in math, you can't just say, see, I did it. You usually need to show some work. And so if you actually work this out and make some assumptions about this, that this is a square with right triangles and a smaller square inside, you can prove Pythagorean theorem with this. That's kind of cool. And back to Fermat's last theorem, which stated that if you have n greater than 2, that it doesn't work. But if you type this one in your calculator, which showed up actually in The Simpsons, it is so close that you can't tell that it's wrong because the number of digits that show up on your calculator screen will make it look like this actually is equal, but the Fermat's last theorem states that it won't be equal. Another cool thing is that if you build shapes off of a right triangle that are not squares, it will still work as long as they're similar. So the area of these two wonky shapes will be, when added together, will be equal to the area of the shape that's across from the hypotenuse. And then the weird part is that Pythagoras actually had a gang or cult of mathematicians. And usually this makes people laugh, but this was kind of the good part, known as the Pythagorean Brotherhood. And they had certain rules, like they sort of worshipped numbers, specifically rational numbers. They didn't eat beans. They played musical instruments that related to ratios, like the golden ratio, and they worshipped the Fibonacci sequence, which was kind of funny because the Fibonacci sequence ties more into irrational numbers. And then they also worship the pentagon and the pentagram because when you draw in the diagonals, you get another pentagon that is similar to the original one. And that when you compare the ratio of some of these line segments, it is the golden ratio, which is from the Fibonacci sequence. So, kind of one of the things that they worshipped, but also kind of broke some of their rules of this cult or gang. And then I'm going to read some of this. And this was an excerpt from a book called Zero, the Biography of a Dangerous Idea. And it states, the legends are hazy and contain contradictory stories about the betrayal and ultimate fate of Hippasus. Mathematicians to this day tell of the hapless man who revealed the secret of the irrational to the world. Some say that Pythagoras tossed Hippasus overboard, drowning him, a just punishment for ruining a beautiful theory with harsh facts. And ancient sources talk about his perishing at sea for his impiety, or alternatively, say that the Brotherhood banished him and constructed a tomb for him, expelling him from the world of human beings. But whatever Hippasus's true fate was, there is little doubt that he was reviled by his brothers. The secret he revealed shook the very foundation of the Pythagorean doctrine, but by considering the irrational an anomaly, the Pythagoreans could keep the irrationals from contaminating their view of the universe. Indeed, over time, the Greeks reluctantly admitted the irrationals to the realm of numbers. So this relates to a story that Hippasus went around and drew a square with a diagonal and would tell some of the Pythagorean Brotherhood to solve or Pythagorize this square in the diagonal. And when we do that, if we have a 1 by 1 by 1 by 1 square and we draw on the diagonal and we solve for that using Pythagorean theorem, we get square root of 2. And so Pythagoras tried to tell Hippasus to stop drawing these sorts of diagrams, which just frustrated him. And Hippasus wouldn't stop. And hence the story of the Pythagoreans, legend has it, killing Hippasus for sort of unleashing irrational numbers. And then the other part of this is, just as the legend of Hippasus's murder are hazy, so too are the legends of Pythagoras' end. Nevertheless, they imply that the master died in a bizarre way. Some say that Pythagoras starved himself, but the most common versions all say that beans were his undoing. One day, according to a version of the legend, his house was set, typo there, on fire by his enemies, who were angry at not being considered worthy to be admitted in Pythagoras' presence, and the brothers in the house scattered in all directions, running for their lives. And they slaughtered and killed Pythagoreans, and the brotherhood was destroyed, and Pythagoras himself fled for his life, and he might have gotten away had he not run smack into a bean field, and he stopped and declared that he would rather be killed than cross the field of beans. And obviously his pursuers were happy to oblige, so he was killed. Legend has it because he was following his sort of ridiculous doctrine. And then I'm going to post this, but there's a cool little Simpsons video that references this and intentionally does it incorrect. And before you click to the next slide, if you do want to watch this, click into the Google slideshow, click the video, and then before you click to the next slide, the kind of trivia question is, this is not only incorrect mathematics, but is a direct quote from a famous movie. And the famous movie is one of the few movies that is half black and white, like not color and color. Hopefully you enjoyed some of this, and hopefully you'll check out the slideshow so you can watch this short Simpsons snippet.